Council must act. It can no longer remain a silent witness to an unfolding tragedy, nor hide behind declarations of intent. The time for theoretical debates is over. It is now time to uphold the very principles that define this institution: peace, security, and respect for international law. International law that is universal and applies to all, even while seeking African solutions. Standing by silently while civilians are killed is not a solution, and certainly not an African one. We reiterate the urgency of these measures and demand immediate action. First, the Security Council must order an end to Rwanda's hostilities and demand the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of its troops from Congolese territory. These forces have trampled on international law, brought death and devastation, and violated our sovereignty. Their withdrawal is not negotiable, it is an imperative. Second, the Security Council must impose targeted sanctions, including asset freezes and travel bans, on the command structure of the Rwandan Defense Forces and the political decision makers responsible for this aggression, including those who feign ignorance of their own troops' whereabouts. Thousands of Rwandan soldiers are leading M23 operations in our country, while their president, in a calculated display of plausible deniability, says, "I don't know." But you, members of the Council, know. We all know. The survivors who had to bury 4,000 bodies in Goma know. And in Goma, those graves bear witness. Third, the Security Council must impose a total ban on the export of all minerals from Rwanda, particularly coltan and gold, in order to end the looting of our resources. The DRC has taken its own measures by designating several mining sites as red zones, including Rubaya, from where Rwanda fraudulently exports over 150 tons of coltan each month. But national measures alone are not enough. As long as Rwanda is allowed to launder our resources with impunity, this war will continue. Fourth, the Security Council must immediately revoke Rwanda's status as a troop-contributing country to United Nations peacekeeping missions. A country that besieges MONUSCO bases, targets its aircrafts, and launches deadly attacks on UN peacekeepers, then goes further, using the repatriation of fallen peacekeepers as a political bargaining chip, has defied the very principles of peacekeeping. This contradiction erodes the credibility of the United Nations. Rwanda's status must be revoked without delay. Fifth, the Security Council must impose a strict notification and monitoring mechanism for any sale or transfer of arms to Rwanda. Every shipment of weapon destined for Kigali must be declared, traced, and closely monitored. It is unacceptable that arms continue to reach groups responsible for massacres and regional destabilization and under United Nations sanctions.
Rwanda cannot take the blame for the problems that DRC has faced endemically. As President Kagame stated in Addis Ababa, and I quote, "We have our own problems to deal with. Congo is too big for Rwanda to carry on its back," end of quote. Rwanda has no interest in DRC's internal struggles. Allegations of land grabbing in courts or corrupt or occupation ignore fundamental power imbalances at play in the DRC. Our sole priority has always been and will always remain the security of our borders and the stability of our nation. We have stated over and over again the existential security threat that Rwanda faces from DRC, and these we take very seriously. Council members, Rwanda continues to welcome refugees fleeing the violence in the DRC, despite persistent calls from the DRC and its allies to impose sanctions on Rwanda. Ironically, among those crossing into Rwanda are the same security threats we have repeatedly warned this esteemed council about. On 29th January, over 280 foreign mercenaries, along with over 100 Congolese soldiers, crossed into Rwanda territory, exposing the FARDC's long-standing use of foreign fighters with no reaction whatsoever from the international community. Yet, as we have repeatedly said, the use of mercenaries by state actors contravenes the 1989 United Nations Convention and the 1977 OAU Convention, which prohibits and illegalizes the use of mercenaries by states. More concerning is the international community's reluctance to address the existential threat Rwanda faces, the ethnic cleansing of Congolese Tutsi, and the misinterpretation of the conflict. Instead of acknowledging the DRC's responsibility, blame has been conveniently shifted, first to Rwanda, and now even to former President Joseph Kabila. When will this blame game end? I think someone here has to take responsibility. Reality has always been clear. The M23's resurgence is rooted in decades-long persecution of Congolese communities based on ethnicity, predating Rwanda's current government. Rwanda has consistently warned that the FDR is central to this crisis. Since 2018, over 20 incursions have been launched into Rwanda, particularly in the southern province and in the northwestern region. Despite claim that the FDR is a weakened force, its active collaboration with and financing by FARDC proves otherwise. The DRC government must recognize that its coalition with the FDR destabilizes Rwanda and perpetuates suffering among Congolese civilians. Ignoring the FDR's role is a failure to hold accountable those responsible for exporting extremist ideology beyond Rwanda's borders. But beyond the FDR council members, Rwanda is also concerned by a myriad of foreign forces deployed along its borders, namely the Burundian forces that share the same ethnic ideology as the FDR, SAMI DRC, and the remaining mercenaries. We are also concerned by the president of DRC's push for more foreign troops he is currently requesting from other African countries. All those foreign forces need to withdraw from Eastern DRC as they constitute a direct threat to Rwanda's security. In fact, when Goma fell, FARDC, Burundian forces, and FDLR forces turned their weapons on Rwanda, killing 16 innocent civilians and wounding 177 civilians, and destroying their properties and livelihoods. Yet no country condemned this blatant violation of Rwanda's sovereignty. Rwanda has no choice but to strengthen its defense and will continue to do so. Mr. President, on the question of MONUSCO, we have been very, very clear, and Rwanda's position remains peacekeepers have to be safe, peacekeepers have to be protected, and that is a canon that we respect, and we have said it over and over again. However, transparency is also very important. Information to the Council that is accurate is critical. There is critical information that we believe SRSG Bintu Keita should have shared with the Council on MONUSCO's collaboration with M23, and specifically the outcome of a meeting that was held yesterday between DSRSG, Vivian Van der Per, and the leader of AFC/M23, Corneille Nangaa. We believe that that information would have been critical to share so that at least the Council knows. Mr. President, regarding mineral exploitation, the responsible parties are well known who exploit DRC. Rwanda holds no mining concession in the DRC, yet we continue to be falsely accused. The claim that mineral resources fuel this conflict is false and inciting. The M23 issue is about people fighting for their rights and survival, fighting for their inherent citizenship rights and access to their own ancestral property. Rwanda cannot be scapegoated for the DRC's economic dysfunction. It is Congolese officials who benefit most from instability and the corrupt mining sector, whereas Rwanda has always promoted responsible sourcing and formalized trade to curb smuggling and illicit activities in mining. Mr. President, Council members, Rwanda remains committed to regional mechanisms to neutralize the FDLR and ensure the withdrawal of all foreign forces that threaten our security. These steps are essential for Rwanda's stability and lasting regional peace. Once these conditions are met, Rwanda will adjust its defensive measures accordingly. We urge the DRC to engage genuinely in the EAC SADC peace process and call on the international community to support these Africa-led initiatives rather than imposing counterproductive measures. If sanctions or punitive measures were the solution to this region's problems, Rwanda would be the first to support them. However, history has shown otherwise. These only deepen division and undermine regional peace efforts. To conclude, Mr. President, Council members, Rwanda remains guided by the firm belief that our region's future depends on unity, shared prosperity, and inclusive peace. The historical and cultural ties between our communities hold untapped potential, and we hope that through dialogue and cooperation, we can bring lasting peace and development this region desperately needs. I thank you.
No, I mean, the commitment to a political solution is one that is unwavering, first of all for the DRC, but also for all countries of the region, as well as for the Security Council. So I think it is an important takeaway to say that everyone is committed to a political solution. The fighting must end, and for that, the Rwandan troops must withdraw. I think it's important also to highlight that the current situation that UN peacekeepers and peacekeepers from SADC are facing right now is, likely to a siege. They are surrounded by the M23 that is backed by Rwanda, that has invested millions of dollars in equipment, where the United Nations itself said a few months ago that they were outgunned and unable to match the firepower of the M23. So of course there is a disequilibrium, if you want, in terms of the firepower. But it does not mean that, first of all, the military approach, which we see clearly is the one that Rwanda has been privileging, is an acceptable one, especially not when the Security Council, but also the DRC, the country where this is happening, is refusing to engage only on a military level. We are looking for a political solution, and we're committed to it. The problem that we have is that despite the commitments that Rwanda, or the lip service that Rwanda serves to the cause of a political solution, when we look on the ground, we see desolation, we see the constant advance of the M23, we see executions of children, as reported by the OHCHR yesterday, and we see that Rwanda is not being faithful or keeping their words and not being sincere in engaging in a political solution. So this is why we urge the Security Council and we urge the international community to draw all the necessary consequences and hold Rwanda accountable. There will be accountability down the line. When we look at the ICC, when we look at the Human Rights Council that is going to send a monitoring mission or evaluation mission or fact-finding mission, there will be accountability down the line. The reason why we urge the Council to take sanctions now and to take action now is to prevent. We're not in a system where we just react and document to human rights violations. We also have the obligation, the international community, the United Nations, we have the obligation to prevent human suffering, to prevent war. And this is why we come to the Council, to emphasize the need to prevent and to take robust action to prevent further war. Thank you.